The lunch crowd was thick that Saturday, the kind of chaos where the sound of sizzling bacon and clinking glasses blended into a familiar, comforting hum. The old diner off Route 46 had seen better days, chipped counters, flickering neon signs, and walls that carried decades of grease and stories. But to most travelers and locals, it wasn't just a diner, it was a piece of home. Behind the counter worked an elderly woman named Martha. 73 years old, with silver hair tied in a neat bun and a kind smile that never seemed to fade, no matter how rude or tired the customers were. Her back ached, her knees hurt, and her hands trembled from arthritis, but she came every day. She didn't work for money alone, she worked for purpose. After her husband died and her only son moved away, the diner was all she had left to keep her mind busy and her heart from collapsing under the weight of loneliness. That afternoon, a sleek black BMW screeched into the parking lot. Out stepped a group of 3 teenage boys, all wearing designer clothes, gold watches, and the smug confidence of kids who'd never been told no. Their leader, Dylan, was the son of a powerful businessman in town, a name that opened doors and closed mouths. They walked in, laughing loudly, their sneakers squeaking against the old linoleum. The entire diner went quiet for a moment. Martha, ever gracious, smiled warmly as they slid into a booth near the window. "Good afternoon, boys," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "What can I get you today?" Dylan didn't look up from his phone. "I don't know, Grandma," he said with a lazy smirk. "You got anything edible in this dump?" His friends burst into laughter. Martha chuckled lightly, brushing off the insult. "Well, the burgers are pretty good. Folks say they're the best around." "Yeah, right," Dylan said, rolling his eyes. "Just bring us 3 burgers, fries, and sodas. And make it quick, we don't have all day." She nodded and shuffled back to the kitchen. But just a few booths away, a group of bikers sat quietly, 6 men, rough-looking, tattooed, their leather vests gleaming with club patches. They were road-hardened but respectful regulars. The leader, a big man called Bear, watched the teens closely, his eyes narrowing slightly. He'd seen enough in life to spot arrogance from a mile away. When Martha returned with the food, her hands shook slightly as she placed the plates down. "Here you go, boys. Fresh off the grill," she said with a smile. Dylan took one look at the burger and sneered. "What is this?" "I said quick, not garbage." He poked the bun with his fork. "Looks like something you scraped off the floor." His friends laughed again, and one pulled out his phone, already recording. Martha's smile faltered for a second. "I'm sorry if it's not what you expected." "I can," but before she could finish, Dylan leaned back, picked up his soda, and with a cruel grin, spat into it, then tossed the cup toward her apron. It splattered across her uniform, staining it dark. The entire diner went silent. The laughter from the teens echoed in the air, sharp and ugly. Martha froze, her wrinkled hands clutching her apron, her lips trembling. "You missed a spot, Grandma," Dylan said, smirking. "You should clean that up." From the back booth, Bear slowly rose from his seat. His boots thudded against the floor like distant thunder. The other bikers followed, their eyes cold. The diner seemed to shrink as they walked forward, stopping right beside the boys' table. "Apologize," Bear said simply. His voice was low, steady, but it carried the weight of a man who didn't ask twice. Dylan looked up, suddenly aware of how massive the man was. I don't think this is your business, old man," he said, forcing a laugh. "She's just a waitress." Bear leaned down until his face was inches from Dylan's. "You see that woman over there?" he said, nodding toward Martha, who was quietly trying to wipe her apron with trembling hands. "That, just a waitress, has more dignity in her little finger than you've got in your whole spoiled body." The diner's air turned heavy. Dylan's friends shifted uncomfortably, realizing this wasn't a joke anymore. "Look, we were just kidding," one of them started. Bear raised a hand. "No. You weren't. You thought humiliating an old lady was funny. You thought money made you better than her." He straightened up. "Tell you what, you're gonna make this right. Dylan tried to stand, but Bear's hand landed firmly on his shoulder, pinning him back into the seat. The entire diner watched. You're gonna clean that mess you made. Every bit of it. Then you're gonna apologize. Out loud. I'm not doing that, Dylan said, but his voice had lost its edge. Bear's expression didn't change. Then I call your father. Because I know him. He built that fancy hotel on 8th Avenue, used non-union labor and cheated 3 local guys out of pay. You think I don't know people? Dylan's face went pale. He swallowed hard. You know my dad? Bear nodded slowly. Yeah. And if you don't make this right, I'll make sure he hears exactly what kind of man he's raising. For a moment, Dylan just sat there, his jaw tight, pride warring with fear. But when he looked at Martha, still standing there quietly, something shifted. The laughter had stopped. The phones were down. The only sound was the slow hum of the diner's old refrigerator. He stood up, grabbed a napkin, and began wiping the floor. His friends stared, too shocked to move. When he was done, he walked over to Martha. His voice was barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, he said. That was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Martha's eyes softened. It's all right, dear, she said gently. We all make mistakes. It's how we fix them that matters. Bear gave a small nod of approval and returned to his seat. The tension slowly melted from the room. As the teens quietly left the diner, the leader of the bikers called out, Kid. Dylan turned at the door. Be better than your last mistake, Bear said. That's how men grow. Dylan didn't reply, but his eyes lingered on Martha's kind face, a face he would remember far longer than he expected. A week later, on a quiet morning, the diner door opened again. Martha looked up from the counter, and there he was. Dylan. No friends this time. Just him, holding a box. I brought something, he said awkwardly. He opened the box to reveal a brand new apron and a card. For you. Martha smiled warmly, touched. You didn't have to, sweetheart. I know, Dylan said. But I wanted to. I learned something that day. She nodded. That's good. Life's best lessons don't come from comfort, they come from correction. He laughed softly, a little embarrassed, but grateful. Yeah. Guess I needed both. As he left, Bear and his crew happened to be pulling up on their bikes. Dylan paused, gave them a respectful nod. Bear grinned and tipped his head. Martha watched from the window, her heart swelling with quiet pride. People could change. Sometimes all it took was someone strong enough to stop cruelty in its tracks, and someone kind enough to forgive it. The story of that diner spread around town, not because of the humiliation, but because of what followed. People began coming more often, drawn by the warmth of the place, by Martha's kindness, and by the reminder that respect isn't bought, it's earned. And as for Dylan, he started showing up every weekend, working a few hours in the kitchen, learning humility one plate at a time. He'd never forget the day he spat on an old waitress, not because of his shame, but because that was the day he finally learned what real strength looked like. Not the kind that comes from power, wealth, or pride, but the kind that comes from compassion, and the courage to do what's right. And in that old diner on Route 46, between the scent of frying bacon and the laughter of strangers, a rich boy finally learned what it meant to be truly human.